Welcome to the Disney Wedding Podcast. This show is brought to you by Carrie Hayward's Fairy Tale Weddings Guide, the only guidebook and bridal organizer tailored exclusively to Disney's fairy tale weddings at Walt Disney World. I'm Carrie Hayward, and each week I feature Disney wedding updates, money-saving tips, and interviews with wedding vendors and real Disney couples. I also cover honeymoons, anniversaries, and engagements at the Disney parks and resorts. Join me now as the Disney Wedding Podcast celebrates romance at Disney destinations. Today on the Disney Wedding Podcast, I am speaking with AJ Wolfe, the creator and owner of the Disney Food Blog, all about food-related ideas for your Disney wedding, honeymoon, or anniversary. Now, this is the first time AJ has been on the show in 12 years, so a lot has changed since the first time she was on the show, and today we are going to talk about all of that and how it applies to someone who is planning a wedding at Walt Disney World. So welcome, AJ.
Thank you so much for having me back on, Carrie. It's been so long.
I know. I cannot believe it. I can't believe this podcast has been on for 12 years.
I know. We're both getting up there in years now, Carrie. We're pushing it.
What year did you start the Disney Food Blog?
Started in 2009. And so the last time we talked, it was still pretty new.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Now we just celebrate our 15th year.
Wow, congratulations. Yeah, so much has changed. I remember during our last discussion, Disney had just started doing like specialty cupcakes and dipping their toe in that water. And now they have so much stuff going on.
Oh, I know. They have just done a total 180 on food over the past, 10, 15 years. I think they realized that with the advent of things like Instagram and other photo-based social media platforms, because, when we started, I was still using my DSLR in there, there weren't smartphones. And so I think with the advent of all of those social media platforms, people being able to make their own content, Disney realized that food was a destination for a lot of people and that they could use food to direct crowds in certain places and into certain areas that maybe they didn't have as many crowds as they wanted. And so they've really used food in an amazing way over the past 15 years.
Interesting. Okay. So can you tell my listeners a little bit about yourself and how you started the Disney Food Blog?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started Disney Food Blog, like I said, 2009. I wanted that site to exist, and it didn't. And so we made it. My husband and I own the company together. And so we made the site, and I was like, well, nobody's really talking about food across the board. A lot of Disney sites at the time were very broad and they covered everything Disney, and food was a very, very small part of it. And again, the internet was not very photo based. And so food didn't really get a whole lot of play because food is such a photo based thing. It's such a visual thing. And so I kind of started it at just the right time when Twitter was starting and Instagram started up a couple years later. And suddenly the visual platform was just huge and just exploded and blew up. And people actually felt confident and comfortable talking about the fact that food is a destination and they loved to eat and that they planned their Disney, restaurants before they even planned their rides. And so anyway, we made the site 2009 and just kind of grew with all of the social media platforms coming in just a couple years later. And so that really pushed us forward.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned that Disney has really done a 180 on how they handle food. How has the Disney Food Blog evolved over the years?
Disney Food Blog has evolved a lot. So when I started it in 2009, I did everything, right? I think I was the very first content creator, we didn't even have that term back then, to go and eat every single food item at the Food and Wine Festival and blog about it. Because I used to go to on day one, I would go to every single booth. I would buy every single food item. And then I would go to Jelly Rolls and I'd sit there and edit all my photos and write the blog post and stay there till 2 a.m. doing that. And so what's happened since is, of course, we've gotten so much bigger. We've hired staff. We've got reporters who are in Disney World and in Anaheim, and they're in the parks every day. We still eat every single new food item that comes out, and we still review all of that stuff. But now, of course, we've got a YouTube channel. We've got social media. So it's gotten to be a much bigger endeavor. So there's no way I can do it all alone. So I've got a great team who's doing it with me.
That's fantastic. So today I want to start by talking about catered wedding events. So for listeners who are planning a reception after a wedding at Walt Disney World, or perhaps off property like at a Catholic church, or if they're doing a celebration, which is what Disney calls a dessert party, or if you just had like cake and champagne after your ceremony. So these questions are going to be about things that people can add when they are customizing a menu for their event. And I think that that's one thing that I'd like to explore with you, because a lot of people do not understand that they can customize the menu for their Disney wedding. So their planner sends them these sample menus and they think that's it. You can actually build a menu from scratch, or you can take things from different menus, or you can say, I want something from this restaurant to be recreated, or you can say, here's my family recipe, please recreate this. So I have a whole episode of the Disney Wedding Podcast called Menu Planning Tips for Walt Disney World Weddings, where we talk about this. And then, of course, Chapter 4 of the Fairy Tale Weddings Guide is all about food, beverage, and cake. So AJ, let us talk now about catered wedding events.
Yeah.
So since Disney can recreate any dish for a couple's menu, what are some park-specific favorites that you would recommend for a wedding meal?
I love this question because I don't know if you know this, but I actually used to do dessert parties in the parks for readers. And I actually had them recreate all of my favorites. I didn't know that they could do this. And I think way back then, I'm not sure how often they did it. But yeah, I had them recreate a whole menu of my favorite desserts from all over the parks and the restaurants. And that's what we served. And I just absolutely loved it. So things I was thinking about here that people might not automatically think about is festival food items. So if you are at a festival booth like an Epcot and you love this particular festival food item that you can only get at one time of the year, and they may take it off the menu the next year, being able to recreate something like that you loved, maybe you and your spouse or your partner had that your first trip to Epcot or something like that. I think that could be really, really fun. The other one I really thought of here was cheddar cheese soup, which I love. That's from Le Cellier. And I don't know how often they do soups at weddings in Disney World, but I think I would definitely love to have that at my wedding personally.
Yeah, that's a great point. I have interviewed a lot of people who added this to their wedding, and what they often do is they do them as shooters. So it's like a past appetizer, and then it's just a little bit of soup instead of a big bowl of soup.
Right. Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah. The other soup that's popular is the strawberry soup from 1900 Park Fair.
Yep. Absolutely. Love that stuff. And it just, that restaurant just reopened after 4 years after COVID. So that's back in action.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. Can you think of anything from Hollywood Studios or Animal Kingdom that comes to mind that might be fun for a menu?
Hollywood Studios, I would probably definitely zero in on whatever your favorite is from Brown Derby. So the Cobb salad, maybe the grapefruit cake, something like that. Well, obviously you wouldn't have grapefruit cake, but you could have a grapefruit cake martini, at your wedding. So something like that I think would be great. But of course, I'm kind of a chicken tenders and fries kind of girl. And so I was also kind of playing with ideas from sci-fi or 50s prime time. It'd be fun to have the drinks from 50s prime time and stuff like that could be really great. And then Animal Kingdom, there are fewer options, I think, at Animal Kingdom that I would absolutely go for. I would probably trip on over to Animal Kingdom Lodge instead and grab maybe some of the soups from Boma or something like that, or maybe the bread service from Sanaa and have that done instead.
That's a good point. Yeah, a lot of people add zebra domes to their dessert menus.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And also on that note, when you mentioned the festivals, another popular idea that maybe my listeners haven't heard of is to do an around the world at Epcot menu. So sometimes you can do either action stations that represent different countries or just have a single menu item from different countries. And like you were saying, AJ, that's a great chance to bring in things from the Food and Wine Festival to add to your menu.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds good.
So then another thing couples don't often realize is that they can actually add savory food to what we in the community refer to as dessert parties, which these are private events usually in front of fireworks. We all call them dessert parties as shorthand, but Disney calls them celebrations, and you can serve any kind of food you want. You don't have to stick with desserts. AJ, can you recommend any sweet and savory combinations that might be good for one of these parties?
So, sweet and savory combinations is kind of hard. I know right now there is a huge trend of stuffed croissants. And so I was thinking it could be really fun to do kind of like a cream cheese and sweet jam or something filled croissant. Like I think that would be really fun, but there's not a whole lot that's coming to mind that's already at Disney. I know that they have a peanut butter and jelly croissant which has a little bit of a sweet and salty going on. But something else that I was thinking was there's a huge trend right now for loaded french fries, which I think would be a blast. And right now, Disney just launched about 7 new types of loaded fries around Walt Disney World. And one of them is actually a chocolate strawberry French fry combo. It's like French fries that are doused in cinnamon and sugar. So it's still a savory potato, but you've got cinnamon and sugar and then strawberry and chocolate on top of it. So very interesting. I don't know that it's really going to take off, but I think that could be kind of fun as well to do kind of a loaded fry situation that you could also do a sweet and salty combo with.
That's a great idea because, yeah, you could do a poutine bar or a tater tot bar, or you could do a French fry bar, and then Disney would just put out whatever toppings you asked for. So, yeah, you could ask for bacon and cheese and all that stuff, but then you could also ask for this cinnamon sugar or whatever kind of sweet stuff and just mix it up. That's a great idea. And then I was thinking for the croissants, maybe you could have the sweet ones you mentioned and then do croissants that had like hot dogs or sausages in them or something.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You could do like sausage rolls.
Yeah, but French.
Yes, exactly. Saucisses. We call them saucisses when I lived in Switzerland.
That's awesome. So you touched on this a little bit, but are there any popular or trending foods right now that couples who are planning in the next few months might want to add to their menu?
What's really trending at Disney World, what they're doing a lot of right now is barbecue. And also something that's very trendy right now, obviously, is customization. And I know that customization has been present at weddings forever, but things like custom bowls, custom barbecue, and something else that I would absolutely love to see more of at weddings is sauces. So lots of different sauces to try. So if you've got that barbecue, having those 4 or 5 different sauces, like they have at Regal Eagle over in Epcot with all the different sauces from around the country, that could be very, very fun. So I would be all in for a barbecue wedding.
I love this idea. I'm one of those people who thinks that French fries are just a vehicle for sauce.
Yes.
So the idea of having all these sauces, and barbecue is a great mention because it's cheap. Like if you compare a Disney wedding menu and you tell the chef we want to do a barbecue versus the cost of, steak and salmon and all that stuff, it's a lot cheaper to do barbecue. So that's fantastic that it's really on trend right now.
Well, I think it's probably on trend because it's cheap. Like I feel like Disney's opening barbecue restaurants. But because they've opened like 3 barbecue restaurants in the past 2 years. So that's probably why.
Interesting. Okay. So then I know we've talked a little bit about desserts. Can you give me an idea of what you find to be the most popular Disney desserts or your favorite Disney desserts that couples might want to consider adding to one of their wedding events?
Yeah, what I see a lot of at Disney right now, which I don't necessarily recommend because I think they're boring, are those mousse domes. Like, I think they're unbelievably boring. They're like mousse domes with a glaçage over the top, and I'm sure they're very easy to make, but they're just always tasteless. I don't understand. So my recommendations, of course, are going to be my classic favorites, which have been my favorites since we last talked. All of those great bread puddings, the bread pudding at Ohana, the bread pudding at Raglan Road, those are so easy to make. They just get better as they sit around. So, they're a perfect thing to serve at a wedding because they're not going to go bad or anything. And again, with the sauce, you can bring a bunch of sauces. You can have caramel, you can have creme anglaise, you can have strawberry sauce, you can have all these different sauces that you could do, a chocolate sauce. And so it could be very customizable that way. If you just have a really good, rich bread pudding, you can put anything on it. So I love that. Something else that I wanted to mention, which you probably have to pay a bajillion dollars for this, but one of my best friends in the whole wide world went to an event 100 years ago, at the Haunted Mansion in Disneyland. Now, this was a Club 33 event, and they had a dinner that was all completely inspired by the Haunted Mansion. And the dessert was a Madame Leota crystal ball made of sugar, and it like lit up inside. And it was like a picture of Madame Leota inside. And it was absolutely incredible. And I'm sure that that's never going to happen again on Disney property, but that would be awesome. If you have the cash to splurge on, make a bunch of crystal balls out of sugar. That would be great.
That is an awesome idea because, I saw those and they are amazing. And Disney, they love to make magic for couples. So I say ask about it because they do crazy stuff like ice slippers with sorbet that light up. And I think they have an ice rose, and then they have individual chocolate slippers and all kinds of crazy things. So it's one of those things that they don't advertise. But I would definitely have your planner talk to the team about whether that's possible.
Yeah, they might see it as like a challenge and let's do it.
Okay, so cake, my favorite topic of all time. Disney offers Dole Whip and churro as wedding cake flavors. Are there any other desserts that are popular at Disney parks that you think would be a good flavor inspiration for a Disney wedding cake?
I would love to see, Disney's been doing quite a bit of the chocolate with chilies, like the spicy chocolate. So I think that could be very interesting, even if it's like a flourless cake. I don't know if they do flourless cakes for weddings, but that could be an interesting one. I also would really love to see strawberry shortcake. I'm sure they have strawberry cake, but I would love to see more of like a dense, like a bundt strawberry shortcake vibe. That'd be so delicious, I would think. I'm a big dense cake fan, but I still want the frosting on it. So, when people make a dense cake, they don't do any frosting because they're like, oh, it's already too sweet. I'm like, there's no such thing. You put the frosting on it.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's a great thing to ask of the culinary team because they might tell you, well, it's too dense to make a layer cake out of it, but they could just make you strawberry shortcakes, like individual ones or in a tray or something where they cut it up and serve it. So definitely ask if that's something you're interested in.
Yeah, I'm okay with sheet cake. That's all right.
Okay, so we've touched on this a little bit, but what would be your dream menu for an event at Disney World?
This is so difficult because it will be a different answer every single time I get asked. And I will never forget, I was presenting at the Food and Wine Festival in Disneyland one year. We were doing a Q&A and someone asked me what my favorite thing was to eat in Disneyland. And I'm very bad at public speaking and I couldn't think. And I just said chicken tenders because I do love a Disney chicken tender, very much so. But a friend of mine later on was like, why didn't you say the Monte Cristo? That is your favorite thing to eat. And I'm like, that is my favorite thing. So whatever I say here, please do not hold me to it because I will probably lay awake tonight and feel badly that I didn't say something else. But anyway, the things that popped into my head, Steakhouse 71 stack burger. I don't know if you can have a stack burger at your wedding, but I would. I actually did have burgers. I eloped. I didn't have a wedding, which is anathema for this audience. But we went and got burgers after we got married.
There's always a chance for a vow renewal.
Oh my gosh, very possibly. And then Gasparilla Island Grill mac and cheese. This is one of my new obsessions. Gasparilla Island Grill, which is the counter service restaurant at Grand Floridian, has the best mac and cheese. I don't know why. I know it's house made and I know the chef is back there adding cream to it when it starts to get too dry. I love it. The Cooks of Dublin vintage Irish cheese and bacon dip. That's one of my favorite things to eat in Disney World. Again, all this cheesy, very rich stuff. You will not see a salad on this menu. I would get that with like house-made seasoned chips probably. I would have the Le Cellier poutine, again, cheese. And then I would have carrot cake cookies because those are my favorite.
Oh, that sounds delicious. I would like to come to your event.
Okay. You are invited. I can't vouch for how you'll feel after the event though.
Okay, great. So let's move on to talk a little bit about restaurants, which is another specialty of Disney Food Blog. And in chapter 10 of the Fairy Tale Weddings Guide, I have a bunch of information for people who are planning to do like a welcome party or a rehearsal dinner, farewell dinner, or maybe they just want to have their ceremony at Disney, but instead of doing a catered event, they want to eat at a restaurant after the ceremony. So in chapter 10, I have these two lists. One is a list of all the private rooms on Disney property, and there are actually not very many. And And then one is a list of restaurants that are popular for group dining. So I would love to talk to you, AJ, about what are some restaurants at the resorts or at Disney Springs, since you can't wear your wedding attire inside the parks, that you would recommend for group events around the wedding, like the rehearsal dinner or the farewell party.
I would definitely recommend, to me, these are like the old standbys: Ohana, Boma, Raglan Road, Paddlefish, Boathouse. I'm sure that those all have capacity to seat, at least a rehearsal dinner, maybe a small one. I'm guessing Paddlefish and Boathouse both have private rooms, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend those because I think the food is excellent. I would recommend them because I think that you could have a really beautiful space with a good view, which, would be important to me. Raglan Road, I would recommend just because I love Raglan Road. I think it's a riot and a lot of fun, and I love the food. And then another one that I thought of that I'm not sure you'd be able to do, but I think it would be perfect for an event like this, is Dahlia Lounge, which is up at the top of a Grandestino Tower at Coronado Springs. It is probably one of the most beautiful lounges I have ever seen in my life. It is like 2 stories high, gorgeous view, and it's just a beautiful space. And so that's definitely a place that I would try to finagle having a private event in if they'd be willing.
Yes, that is a great tip. In fact, I interviewed a couple who they did that for their welcome party, and all they did was just open a tab and tell all their guests, that they could put their drink on their tab. And they said it was amazing. Everybody loved the view, and everybody was staying in that resort. It was part of their room block for their wedding. And so that's a great recommendation.
Perfect. I love that idea because nobody knows it's there. Nobody goes up there, which I don't understand why. But I think that, Coronado Springs is a moderate resort. And so people aren't kind of expecting to spend time in a lounge, I don't think. And then the restaurant up there isn't necessarily the most popular restaurant. And it also doesn't have any characters or anything like that. And it's expensive. And so I think not a lot of people are going to travel all the way out to Coronado to go to Toledo. And so Dahlia, I just don't think gets a lot of foot traffic.
Okay, that's a great tip. And for listeners who are interested in doing this, there are instructions in Chapter 10 about how to make group reservations. But basically, Disney limits you to 10 people per reservation. So you need to use multiple My Disney Experience accounts, like from other people in your group. But you just make as many reservations as you need to cover your group size that are all around the same time. They recommend that you do it for like when the restaurant first opens or when it's about to close, so that they'll have a better chance of getting you all seated next to each other. And sometimes you get there, this happens a lot at Ohana, and you have to wait 20 minutes, half an hour, or whatever, for enough tables to open up, but they will try their darndest to get you all put together as a big group.
That's great. I didn't realize that. I would think that Disney would be like, no, please don't do that. So I'm so glad that they actually are cool with it.
Okay, so then for the couple who is maybe on their honeymoon or they're going to celebrate an anniversary, can you recommend the most romantic restaurants at Disney World?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite romantic restaurant is Jico. It doesn't have a good view. There's really nothing to recommend it as a romantic restaurant, except that I feel like the vibe in there is just very chill and it's kind of dark and it just feels romantic to me. What I would always recommend with Jico, though, is it does have those dastardly banquet tables where when you are seated as a duo, you are seated like right next to like Jim and Nancy from Minnesota. They're right next to you. And then, Sue and Tom from Florida are like right on your other side. And so it's basically, it's not romantic at all if you're sitting at those banquet tables. So I always recommend to please request, say, I will wait as long as I need to. We're trying to have a romantic meal. We'd love to have a table that is either in a booth or like separate from other people, or a four-top, so that you're not just right next to Jim and Nancy, as nice as they are, because they're wonderful people, but I don't need that on my date. So that's my favorite place to do like a Valentine's Day or something like that. And it's also not where everybody else is thinking, because everybody else is going to California Grill and they're going to Victoria and Albert's, which I find to be exquisitely unromantic because there's only like 10 people in that restaurant and they're all looking at each other because none of them really know what they're supposed to do because they haven't ever had a meal that fancy. And so everybody's just sort of like freaked out the whole time. It does not feel romantic to me. Maybe that's just me, Carrie. I don't know. But I'm like, it feels just really stressful in there. So
Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
It's not my jam for romance, but hey, maybe it is for you. Especially if you look like the Queen Victoria room where it's just you and one other couple. How awkward is that? I am incredibly awkward, socially awkward, and I am an introvert. And I'm like, am I supposed to be talking to them? Am I not supposed to be talking to, like, my whole brain the whole time would just be like, how am I supposed to handle this situation? So no, I would not recommend going to Victoria and Albert's as a romantic, but I know a lot of people do and they love it. And so it's just me that, I'm the problem. I also was thinking Hacienda de San Angel could be very romantic, right? If you get in there right before the fireworks and you get a window table, because everybody leaves right after the fireworks, right? And the park closes. And so you could kind of have your dessert when there's nobody else there. And because I know they do dim the lights, and it could be very romantic, I think, for a date night, like at the end of an Epcot day.
That's a great recommendation. Yeah, I love that because it combines a great meal with fireworks, my favorite. So,
yeah.
Okay, awesome. So you have a lot of great content on your YouTube channel. Are there any videos in particular that you would recommend for couples who are planning their weddings or honeymoons at Disney?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have any specific wedding videos, but what we do have are a lot of what we call ultimate guides, which are good, kind of broad. Here's everything you need to know about this park. Here's everything you need to know about the hotels, things like that. And I think those are a great place to start. We got playlists for those on the channel. And then we have other videos that are nice, long, good videos that are tips videos, like here's 45 tips or 50 tips that you need, because those are changing regularly. And you would think, a lot of people think that Disney just sort of stays the same. It does not. Every single one of those videos has different tips in it because things change so much. So those are definitely where I would direct people is those good broad videos, because we do try to give you very specific tips that are brand new, things that we just figured out when we were there last. This isn't like, do early entry. This is stuff that it's like, oh, there's a shortcut between this place and this place, and you should definitely use it because nobody knows about it yet kind of tips.
That's fantastic. Okay, now we are going to the lightning round, which I know a lot of podcasts do this, and I thought it would be fun to get your favorites by asking you for your quick first reaction answer to all of these questions. And I know you've mentioned that it might change at any time, so we're going to say today.
Probably chicken tenders. Probably chicken tenders is the answer for every question.
Okay. So there's a Disney park that's all chicken tenders.
I wish. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? I would buy a house next to
it. Okay. Lightning round number 1. What is your favorite Disney park?
It's the park I'm in at the time, but I will throw Epcot out right now because that was kind of my favorite when I first went to Epcot when I was like 8.
Favorite Disney resort?
It would probably be between Wilderness Lodge and Animal Kingdom Lodge.
Favorite attraction or ride?
People Mover.
Favorite Disney character to meet?
Mickey Mouse.
Favorite restaurant to eat at?
Oh, gosh. Favorite restaurant to eat at? Le Cellier.
Favorite meal to order?
This is so hard. This is not fair.
Chicken tenders?
Chicken tenders. Yes, chicken tenders.
Favorite savory snack?
Chicken tenders.
Favorite sweet treat?
Oh, let's see. You know what? Here we go. Ready? This is going to be the Nomad Lounge churros.
Really? I know this is the lightning round, but I have to find out about these. What makes these the special churros among all the churros available at Walt Disney World?
Okay, these are gluten-free churros, which I am not gluten-free, but these are the best churros you will ever eat. And I don't know why. I don't know what makes them so good. They are soft on the inside, crunchy on the outside, the way churros are supposed to be. They're served with 2 sauces. I don't know why they're so good. I couldn't tell you, but I have heard from countless readers, viewers, followers that we are correct in this assumption. So definitely people should try them out.
Okay, hot tip. All right, favorite drink?
Favorite drink? Lapu Lapu.
favorite take-home treat?
Does it have to be Disney World? Can it be Disneyland?
It can be Disney anywhere. It could be Tokyo Disney if you want to be really.
Oh, if we're gonna go to Tokyo Disney, then we have a whole different lightning round. I will say the churro toffee from Disneyland.
Ooh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we wrap up, can you tell my listeners a little bit about your upcoming book, Disney Adults?
Yeah, I sure can. So this is a book I started writing over a year ago, and this is a book for Simon and Schuster. And my editor was just like, "Hey, someone's got to write a book about us," because she's a Disney adult too. And I was like, "You're right. Someone does need to write a book about us." So I spent a year just interviewing Disney adults, interviewing Disney cast members, Imagineers, people who understood sort of these social communities, these not cults, but definitely cultish in the way that we have so many shared experiences and inside jokes, all of like you've got this kind of family of people, but for some reason Disney adults get a really bad rap. And I think we all know the reason. The reason's probably TikTok. But the goal of this book is to kind of show who Disney adults really are. So there's a lot of stories in here about Disney adults. There's a lot of, theories and psychology of why we are the way we are and why we love what we love so much. It's such an interesting book. I will totally own that I can't wait to read it myself when it's finally completely edited, because I loved writing it. And I still think there's so much in there that I don't even remember that I wrote I'm so proud of it.
That's fantastic. Do you have any idea when it's going to come out?
It's coming out August 5th, 2025, and you can pre-order it now over at ajwolfe.com. We've got links to, Barnes & Noble, Target, Amazon, all of the places that sell books.
Fantastic. And then where can listeners go to learn more about Disney Food Blog?
We are on all the social channels at Disney Food Blog. On YouTube, we are at DFB Guide, and DisneyFoodBlog.com, of course.
That's wonderful. Well, AJ, thank you so much for taking time to chat with me today. I think you've offered a ton of great tips for anyone who is puzzling over their wedding menu or planning out what they want to do on their honeymoon, and I appreciate your taking the time.
Thank you so much. It's been a blast.
That's our show for today. I'm your host, Carrie Hayward, inviting you to join me again next week for another episode of the Disney Wedding Podcast. Past shows and tons of photos for each episode are available on my website, DisneyWeddingPodcast.com, or listen in your favorite podcast app. And for instant answers to all your Walt Disney World wedding questions, check out Carrie Hayward's Fairy Tale Weddings Guide, available as an interactive ebook with continual free updates at fairytaleweddingsguide.com.